So, welcome everybody to another edition of Balm to the Soul. I'm your host, Natasha Joy Price, and I'm an energy therapist. I'm an author and, of course, a podcaster. And today we have a lovely new guest, my namesake, or vice versa, but Natasha Ramlall. So, welcome, Natasha. Thank you for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you, Natasha. It's exciting to be to be having a conversation with another Natasha. I don't know why that tickles me so much, but I
I
think
know.
our name is just, it's not so irregular that you never hear it, but it's
No,
also not that common that you meet a lot of other Natashas. So it's
no.
exciting when you do.
Yeah, I don't often meet other Natashas, or if I do, they're quite young, much younger than me. So it's nice to meet you, Natasha. Definitely.
Agreed.
It's
Ditto.
very strange calling someone else Natasha, though, for some
Yeah.
reason. But then there you go. So Natasha is an embodied integration coach, and she helps high functioning, capable women who feel that the ground is cracking beneath them after a difficult life transition or an awakening to a mismatched life. So, talk to us about embodied integration coaching. What's that all about?
Yeah, it's embodied integration is really looking at how generally in the culture that we live in the ways we've been conditioned, and likely out of, the protective mechanisms that drive us in our life,
Mm,
we've kind of fractured these different parts of our human experience, and then we've over prioritized particular parts. So especially for high functioning, hyper capable women, we are up in our heads and we are living primarily from the stories that we are understanding at a cognitive level.
yeah,
And we're relying on our brain to make meaning of our existence, which is, that's biologically, and it's primal. It's natural that we're going to do that. But the problem is that we have overvalued that way of understanding ourselves and understanding our life at the expense of not understanding what it feels like to be in our body, to be connected to the messages coming from our body,
mm,
from nurturing our intuition, and for trusting in that. And without those two pieces working together, we're really not living in the full expression of our humanness. Then you bring in the protective patterns of the ego, and that's another part that needs to be allowed to express itself. And for me, I have a strong belief that a lot of our human challenges will often stem from a lack of a spiritual anchor. So for
mhm,
me, that's kind of the fourth piece, is bringing in that connection to something that is greater than ourselves, something more than just this human experience. And I think that's a really important piece, because if we don't have that, it makes it a lot harder to withstand, the ups and downs and the messiness of being a human. Because humans have a pretty hard life sometimes. And
yeah,
um, but that spiritual anchor kind of helps us to have a sense of our purpose. It kind of helps us make meaning out of some of the more challenging moments of our life and the pain points. So embodied integration coaching is really, I work one-to-one with women. It's online, so it's global. And my role is simply to create a safe place for my clients to practice allowing themselves to be there fully, all the different parts. And I can help to, guide and reflect in which of those parts are longing to be expressed, and, when they may want to come in and have their time. So it's really about integrating the whole experience, which is different and kind of counterculture to what we're used to, which is more like resisting the parts that we don't like, resisting the things that are uncomfortable, resisting the things that are difficult. And integration is really about, let's, rather than resist and give them a reason to get stronger, let's understand how they've come to be a part of our experience, how they are a part of us, if there's anything there for us to be learning about ourselves. And and then that integration piece can really kind of settle some of the activations that are most uncomfortable in our life, and then help us to move forward
Yeah.
from a better place.
Mm.
Yeah.
I can really relate to this because after about 29 years, I have finally retired from being,
Congratulations.
thank you, from being a lawyer. And it's been a month now, really, and I really feel as if I am unraveling, but in a good way, as
Mm.
in the tension that we often hold when we're in corporate and high, functioning roles, um, is so tight that actually, as it slowly relaxed and unraveled, things that I was really interested in, and yet I have completely and utterly forgotten because your head is so full of your job, have suddenly started coming up. And I think, oh, yes, I used to be fascinated about that. Or, oh, yes, I remember reading about that. And the whole, like you say, you're in your head and you are so focused on one aspect, your work, that everything else you forget. It almost falls off your radar, so to speak. And it's a real unraveling. It's allowing yourself to sort of open up and have space, and to really, it's about the parts that you've forgotten about, or actually that you don't even know exist, because you just haven't had that sort of space, or well, it's space to sort of be aware of them almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that in your experience, you've retired from something and you are open to having the space to explore those new parts. And I
Mm,
think that a lot of the time, because we're in sort of that survival mindset,
mm,
we really just don't have capacity to allow ourselves to be with those parts, because
no.
in order for us to keep up with this like productive go 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 pace of the external world that we're trying to navigate, we can't slow down enough to be in the body and to listen.
Mm,
We have to stay up in the head in order to, get shit done.
yeah.
And so I think that's where this idea of an identity rupture hits women who are high functioning, hyper
Mm,
capable differently,
mm,
because we're so used to that orientation to life. Like I'm the capable one, I'm reliable, I can get things done, and I derive a lot of my value from that.
yeah.
People know me as that person that they can count on to get things done. And when we come into this place where we're like, huh, I actually have needs.
Yes.
I actually have needs, and I think that something in me wants to actually know what they are and actually start listening to them and actually start
Mm,
feeding them. That can feel really unfamiliar and almost threatening, to allow yourself to take the time and space to look at those things, because it's like, if I turn my focus on my own needs, then my identity in relationship to all of the other things that I've been relying on to define myself kind of breaks away and it cracks, and
mm,
it's very disorienting and it's
mm,
scary. It's very,
mm.
very scary.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, and I think by finding that space, I think high functioning jobs often sort of really restrict creativity as well. And I think as you open up and you begin to look at those parts, the creative side of you can come out, even if that is creative thinking. And that's where new ideas can come out as well, isn't it?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and I also think physically, the way we live our lives is actually really detrimental, but I don't think we realize it
Yeah.
until you start unraveling. You don't realize how tightly coiled you were,
Oh, that's a
and
great
that,
way to say it. Yeah.
yeah, and like, the muscle aches and pains is because you've got such stress and you're almost like clenching everything so that you can, when you unravel, you realize actually, keeping up that pace and being, stressed all the time is really, really detrimental to
Absolutely.
our health in all aspects, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that that's why right now, at this point in time, and maybe it's always been this way, and I'm just noticing it because I'm in my 50s now, but
Mm,
it feels like this sort of age is where women are coming into this place of unraveling, whether by
yes,
choice, by
yes.
being nudged firmly, or because they've been forced into it. And
Mm,
I think that that is actually a symptom of the fact that we have been bracing for such a long time out of a need to survive and do the things that we feel are necessary to feel safe, but it's just not sustainable. And so after 4 or 5 decades of living that way, something
mm,
breaks. And that's
mm.
where we're just like, okay, I have to do something differently now. Like
Yeah,
this is my pivot point, and I don't feel like I can continue to tolerate things that, I've kind of had nudges along the way that something needed to change, but I just didn't feel like I had the space to make those changes. But now I'm actually being forced. And unfortunately, for some women, it gets to that point, like for
mm,
me, I was in my early 40s when chronic back pain just kind of like stopped my journey, right?
yeah,
There had been nudges all along the way, but I pushed through them. I used medical band-aids. I like found my way to find a way to keep going
mm,
until my body was just like, girl, you're not going to keep going this time. And
no,
I had to turn all of my attention on healing because I could not do my life in the physical pain that I was in.
no,
But of course, it ended up being, looking back, it ended up being such an incredibly pivotal moment, completely changed the trajectory of my life and awakened all of these things inside of me that I had just kind of, tamped down and said, oh, we don't have time
yeah,
for that. We don't have time for that. We don't have space for that. And it's funny when you were talking about that creative piece wanting to come out and kind of express, I
mm.
had this visual of this little girl kind of peeking out around the corner and just being like, now is it okay for me to come out and play?
Yeah,
And I get that
mm,
feeling from a lot of the women that I work with, where it's like, I've forgotten how to play. I've forgotten how to be spontaneous. I've forgotten how to be,
mm,
in the dance of the present moment and just having fun and lightheartedness.
yeah,
Um, and that is a really beautiful thing to watch women intentionally coming back to and recognizing
yeah,
that there's value in that. It's not
yeah,
just if I have time, I can give into this part, but it's actually, one of those essential human needs is to be creative and to be playful and, in the
mm.
moment.
Absolutely. And I think women of that age, one, we still have time to do something else and pivot, and two, usually our children have gone. And so we have got that space. But I feel like absolutely I resonate with that because I feel that although I've retired from being a lawyer, I am pivoting to look at something else and doing something else and hopefully being more creative in that way. So that's exactly what has happened,
Yeah.
basically. And what was my nudge? My nudge, I think I have been nudged very, very clearly, but since Christmas of this year, the fatigue has
Mm,
just been to the point of I'm not sure I can get up and carry
yeah,
on. Not aches and pains, but just exhausted.
yeah,
And I knew that if I didn't do something, I would be ill. I knew
yeah,
that. That kept going through my head. Um, and then, I and then something happened that pushed me. And
Right.
so, yeah, this is the
Yeah.
time I'm going to do that. So
Yeah.
it's a common story,
It
actually.
is. It really is. And even specifically the fatigue part and the
Mm,
exhaustion,
mm,
I think that, you mentioned that for you after retirement, it's kind of been a slow unraveling and just sort
mm,
of like, okay, I'm coming back into noticing these parts of myself that I haven't really been giving too much attention to. But for some women, it can be more, for me, my experience was more like I went from this like hyper vigilant, bracing energy, kind of like a, a sympathetic state of the nervous system, like fight, 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 fight.
yeah.
And when I, retired from my career of 25 years last June, it was almost like a pendulum. It swung to the complete other extreme. And
Mm,
I just shut down. Like I just
mm,
completely shut down. And it was a completely different nervous system state, like the freeze, dorsal vagal shutdown. And I was terrified because as somebody who had always had it together, always had a plan, always organized, knew how to figure out any problem, I didn't recognize myself at all.
mm.
And I think a lot of women will get stuck in that place and start
Yes.
to see it as like, oh my goodness, there's something wrong with me. I'm broken. This is a major character flaw. This is a massive weak, like this is about me
Mm,
being broken. And luckily, because I've been in this work, when this happened to me, I could see that no, this is actually just part of the process. This is the messy middle of a transition phase. And for me, it was kind of like I had to go to the other extreme in order to find my way back to a place of balance.
yeah.
And the real lesson that I am learning in real time is that the lesson of the messy middle is to learn how to trust
Yeah.
because I think the most uncomfortable piece about being in that messy middle place is that I don't know what the future looks like. I don't know what's coming. I don't have a map. I don't have a plan. Nothing's certain. And all the things that I used to help me understand my life in the past, those are gone now. Those are not the things I'm holding on to anymore. Or maybe not all of them, but some significant pieces. Um, and so it's really like, can I trust that if I am learning how to honor my internal messages, my internal guidance system, the one that leads from joy and a sense of alignment, that that's enough and that I
Mm,
can trust that this, journey is going to unfold in a way that's, meant to for me and in the highest interest of everyone involved, whether that's painful or not. Um, and trust is this sort of soul trust that I'm not alone in it. Even when I feel alone, there is something greater than me that is holding me through this experience.
mm,
Um, and if we don't let ourselves be in that discomfort of that messy middle place, we may not learn that lesson and we'll just jump into something else to get away from the discomfort. And we'll be right back in that same cycle and have to go through it again. Um,
mm.
so, a lot of what I'm here to try to help other women understand is that that place where you feel fatigued, exhausted, you don't recognize yourself, and it feels like nothing makes sense. That it's okay to actually learn how to let yourself be there and
Yeah.
allow it to feel terrible. And try to understand that it's part of a process of change rather than a personal weakness in
Mm,
you.
mm.
And take that judgment piece out of the equation as much as possible, replace it with some compassion, some grace, and some acceptance,
Yeah. And that it's not uncommon.
right?
It is something that often happens, and that, in all that messy middle bit, as you say, um, if you stick with it and trust and follow your gut, and your intuition, you often find real nuggets of gold nuggets, basically, of where you can go, where your path is leading you from that point.
Yeah.
But not easy, not easy.
No.
So you as a coach will help people to navigate those feelings, that whole transition
Yeah.
of one going from one norm, deconstructing it and finding another
Oh,
way of
yeah.
being. Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
beautiful way to say it because really at
yeah.
the heart of it, we're reorienting how we show up to our life.
Yeah.
Where, we've likely been externally referencing the points that we understand our lives, how we're supposed to show up, the right way to do life, right?
Mm, mm,
And we're kind of entering this different orientation to life where we're like, no, actually, it's about recognizing my own wisdom from my own lived experience has a lot of value for me. And can I trust that? Can I learn to trust that? And, for a lot of people, that self-trust piece is very tied in with their past traumas, the different things that they've been through. So it's very nuanced, right? Every person is different, but what I see very often, and I can say that this has been part of my experience as well, is that self-trust piece um, can sometimes take a lot of rebuilding.
yeah.
And so doing that with a witness in a safe place of acceptance can be a really key piece in being able to shift that. Um, yeah. And then, I also do group facilitation,
Mm,
but that's always in person. So it's more to my local community in Southern
sure.
Ontario. And I think that's another beautiful area of healing for women. And I think they both have value. Um, and I wish for every woman that they have both those kinds of supports in their
Mm,
life as they're moving
yeah,
through.
definitely. So you do wellness retreats, women's circles, and workshops in your area where you
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
my
that
main thing, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you
that's
there.
okay.
My main thing is an embodied dance practice.
Mm,
So I have a program where we meet weekly and we use dance as a modality to explore embodiment, to, come back to the body, learn how to inhabit the body, learn how to be with all of the messages that are coming up. And that's been a really beautiful space.
mm,
I really love it. There's a really beautiful community that's been born out of that offer. And um, so that's usually a part of anything else I'm offering as well. Not
yeah.
everything, I've done women's circles and different embodiment programs where we weren't doing dance, but oftentimes at retreats and things like that, there will always be a dance component because I
Mm,
found that movement piece ooh, it can be a real game changer for people.
yeah. And how did you get into embodied dance? Because it's not often offered. It's not something that I see often. So how did you
Mm.
get into the embodied dance?
It's an interesting story. When I was a child, okay, so I had launched my coaching business. I had been, involving myself in the coaching work. And I think I was actually listening to a podcast. I might have been vacuuming my living room and I was listening to a podcast. And the guest said something along the lines of, if you want to know what you're meant to be doing with your life, go back and ask 5-year-old you what they would have
Mm,
answered. And I stopped and I thought for a second, oh, well, that's easy. 5-year-old me wanted to be a dancer. And it was one of those moments where the smallest thing all of a sudden becomes this big thing. And you're just kind of like, wait a second. And like, it was like all the Tetris blocks kind of came into place. And I was like, dance, it so beautifully supported the work that I was doing in coaching. Like, I immediately saw the connection. And I'm so grateful that I didn't let myself come up with all the reasons why that was a ridiculous thing to even consider,
yeah.
but instead I just went with that. And everything kind of fell into place. I found a training that was perfectly aligned for what I was looking for. And so I went for it, did the training, came back. So there was like an online portion for the majority of the year, but at the end it culminated with an in-person 2-week intensive. So I traveled to Europe for that. And then when I got back, I started my program and it's been running ever since. And it's just been growing and becoming more and more beautiful. And yeah, it's a real gift to me and it's a really good example, I think, of when we lean into that internal joy, that
Yeah.
glimmer of something that lights you up, and trusting that glimmer enough to take the next right step.
Yeah.
Because, at the time it was just like, this could be a fun side hustle while I'm doing my coaching work. And because I leaned in, it opened up an entire other area of, my personal ways of contributing to the world. I love to facilitate, and I think I'm quite good at facilitating groups of people. And so that became, it extended to women's circles and it extended to the retreats, and it became more of a thing.
Yeah.
But it all started with that simple question of what would a 5-year-old me wanted to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so that, I love the way that that's transpired because I think it can serve as an example to others who feel like, yeah, but, like I have this dream or I have this thing I love so much, but yeah, I don't see how it could actually fit into my life. And really trying to understand the whole picture is where we get stuck. If we can
Yeah.
just understand, well, can I just act on that glimmer? Can I just take that first step and see, does that, open a new door that I can
Yeah.
explore at that point, and just, let that be okay. Like
Mm.
maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I would have gone and done the training and been like, I don't think I'm feeling this,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And if I had been the kind of person who said, well, I don't want to do it in case I don't like it, then I would have closed that door before I even knew
Mm.
what the doorway was leading me to. And in this case, it ended up being such a big, beautiful new addition to my life. I'm just so grateful that I was willing to follow those breadcrumbs.
Yeah. I can hear all the listeners thinking, what did I want to do when I was five
Yeah,
years old?
I hope so. I hope so.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted
Mm,
to be an artist, and I had an obsession with Salvador Dali, and all the
yeah.
images that didn't make sense. And I think it was because it was almost like a dreamlike state, and I loved that. It didn't have to be it didn't have to be what we could see in this dimension. It could be a whole different dimension.
Oh, yes.
I'll have to think around that. Gosh,
Oh,
might be a whole
yeah.
different branch.
Well, and okay, well, so what's giving me chills right now is because you were mentioning at the beginning of our conversation how you're entering this stage of your life where that creativity is coming through
Yeah,
and you're starting to embrace these parts of yourself that have been a little quieted for a while. And then there's this part of you that, 5-year-old you wanted to
yeah,
be an artist, and now you have the space to actually
to
lean
do that.
in and see, let me
Yeah,
see what it
because
feels like to embrace 5-year-old me's longing.
yes, exactly. Because a lot of the time, that was poo-pooed because it's, oh, well, you can't make a living doing that. You've got to
Yeah,
be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or a nurse or whatever it was. Um, and parents did that with the best
of course.
intentions, but it was often just poo-pooed and you were pushed into another direction. And in fact, I remember being at school and them saying, no, you want to do something more academic.
Mm,
So even
absolutely.
schools were the same. So it's lovely to get to a point in your life where you can actually think, well, I can do anything now. I can do,
Absolutely.
and nobody's expecting me to do anything. So that's fine. No
Absolutely.
expectations,
Yeah.
just, yeah,
Yeah.
like you
And
say.
I think that's a really important piece that you're naming too, because with my experience with dance, so from a young age, I loved dance. I embraced it fully. So I, started doing dance training in a more formal
Mm,
way. But and, I did training for, over 12 years, but it never was a fit because my passion for dance came more from, like a primal, free-flowing
mm,
state of sort of as you're describing about that dreamy state that you get
mm,
into with art. It kind of came from there. And
mm,
the training aspect of dance was more about me learning skills and techniques and fitting into the correct way of
yes,
being a performer. It was more about
yes.
performing. And now I also want to say, like, I'm a huge fan of dance as a performance art, and I absolutely love watching dancers, and I have
Mm,
so much love and admiration for them. But for me and my connection with dance, there was a disconnect. And so I think what I'm trying to get at is that oftentimes we think if we can't make a career out of it, if we can't um, get to a particular level of professionality with something, then it's not a good use of our
mm,
time. And, for me as an adult coming back to dance, it was really embracing this idea that, oh, dance doesn't always have to be performative. Where I feel the most aligned is in healing spaces and sort of supportive and caring roles. And dance can be that too. And so
mm,
understanding how it fits, sort of broadening the spectrum of what dance could be was my way of coming back to it in a way that,
yeah.
that made sense for me. And so I think that's what you were saying about we want to put these nudges into well, what is that going to do? Like, what's that going to mean? What's the
Mm,
value in pursuing that thing? And if it's not a clear value in the end, we decide it's not worth spending our time on. And then
mm,
we, sometimes wait until retirement to
mm,
allow ourselves to go and explore those different parts of ourselves.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I think for all of this, the process that you're talking about in your coaching as well, we don't need to know what the end product is. We
right.
don't need to know where, we don't need to be able to see the destination. Perhaps it's about the journey.
Yeah,
And always trying to quantify it. Well, can I earn money from that? That's not what it's about, I don't
yeah,
think. It's
yeah,
about
absolutely.
just connecting to who we truly are, really,
Yeah,
our
absolutely. And
essence.
that piece about can I make money from it is really
Yeah.
tied to will other people see value in it?
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think the orientation with embodied integration is really understanding that I want to internally reference my own idea of value. What
Mm,
do I feel is successful for me? What is important? What lights me up? What gives quality to my life experience? I'm going
mm,
to use that as my gauge for value rather than the opinions of other people. And
mm.
that is a massive shift. And
Yes.
I don't want it to sound so out there that it's like I'm not recognizing that, yeah, okay, but we also have bills to pay and we have to make a living and we have these things to do.
Because we
I
do. Yeah.
Because we do,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I do think that sometimes that willingness to make space for those nudges of joy and pleasure remind us that we can find a balanced way
Mm,
to decide how we want to set up our lives. Whereas most of us kind of default to this setting of like, go to school, you pick the thing, you get really good at it, you make a lot of money. And then if you have some free time outside of that,
yeah.
you can find some hobbies and you can
Yeah.
travel a bit, and hopefully you have a
Yes.
good social circle. And, when we reorient to, but what do I feel excited about right now in this moment? I think we can have a more balanced way of being in our lives. And I think, like, right now in 2026, with AI coming up and all of the different technology, I understand that there's, pros and cons to it for sure, but it does offer a potential opportunity where people can be more balanced in
Mm,
their work and other aspects of their life.
mm,
But do we know how to do that? You have all these people who retire and then they very quickly kind of deteriorate and transition out of this plane because they don't know how to do life if they don't have work to focus on. And I find that
yeah.
so sad, really
Mm,
sad. And I think if we're, more balanced kind of all the way through our journey, we recognize that yes, work is a big part of our lives. Making money is absolutely an essential part of our life, but it's not the whole all the be all and end all of everything.
no.
And there are ways of finding work that feel more aligned and feel more balanced with all the different parts of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you have a free audio. Tell us
Mhm.
about that.
So, one of the foundational practice for embodied integration is landing in the body. And, depending on your how safe it feels to inhabit your body, which is very nuanced for women across the spectrum. Um, that can take some practice and that can take some guidance. So this audio that I'd love to offer to the listeners if they're interested, it's just a
Mm,
20-minute or so guided audio that brings you into the experience of being in your body. And it's not meditation. Meditation is more leaving the experience of your body to kind of get to that more one consciousness place. This is an embodiment practice. So we're actually learning how to inhabit the body and,
mm,
be in the sensation of the body, the direct felt experience of the body. So it's a really great starting point for anybody who, really resonates with what we've been saying about, I've been living in my head. I don't even know what you mean when you say
yeah.
be in the body. Like, what does that even feel like? I think for this is really step one. Like, can we just slowly explore and be curious about what that feels like to be more in the body?
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, I will put all the links up underneath the episode so we can all have a listen to that. So, one thing I do ask all my guests, is there one thing that you do spiritually? It doesn't have to be spiritual, but is there one thing that you do that helps you feel really centered and balanced um, day to day?
Mm. And there's so many different things that come to mind, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep,
Yeah,
all of these different things, because they are
yeah,
sort of that ground
yeah.
zero, right? But I want to give you something a little more interesting that I just kind of become more aware of is this commitment to listening.
Mm,
And it's like a daily commitment that I've made to myself to be a better listener. And it impacts all different areas of my life. So I'm listening more to my own body. I'm
mm,
listening more when I'm out in the world. So, like, using that sense of hearing to bring myself into more presence. And the most impactful one is I'm listening when I'm in conversation or in spaces with other people. And like really listening to understand and to connect rather than, just waiting for my turn to talk, so to speak. Um, and that simple practice has really, really transformed things for me because it's made me more present. It's helped me to slow down and it's helped me to bring, more connection and more meaning into my life.
yeah.
So yeah, commitment to listening, I think has been a really great uh, daily practice. I think I could
Yeah,
frame it
I
that way.
love
Yeah.
that because it can't help but bring you into the present. You've got
Yeah.
to be present in order to do that. So yeah, I love that. Thank you very much. That's
Welcome.
great.
Thanks
So
for asking.
thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. It's been lovely to talk to you and to hear about your work. Um, it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Natasha. It's been my pleasure as well.
So, if you've enjoyed listening to Natasha and I, that always sounds strange, but yes, if you've enjoyed listening to Natasha and I, please like and share the podcast. And you can subscribe for additional episodes and additional guest episodes and meditations and all sorts of additional information. So have a look at that on the show notes as well. And I will speak to you all soon.